Governor of the Reserve Bank, the Chairperson of the South Pacific Stock Exchange, the CEO, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. The first question I asked when I was told about this dinner was, I asked the Chairperson who's paying for it, because, and I asked them whether they're actually making a profit or not, because we actually fund them in their entirety. I'm glad to be told that apparently they're making money from you, and hopefully they'll get a bit of margin, which is good news. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me much pleasure to be here. I do not intend to make a very long speech at all. My apologies for the delay. We just came back from Honolulu. The reason why we need to have a vibrant capital markets is because it provides, amongst other things, the opportunities for companies and individuals that run companies to be able to raise capital without actually having to go to the banks. There are many companies in Fiji actually that are ripe for listing. Many companies in Fiji actually at the moment have been through a third or fourth generation phase. And because of the fact they've been through a third, fourth generation phase, there is a need for not just capital injection, but there is also a recognition that when you have family companies that are so large, it has enormously a large number of people that actually become shareholders. But more importantly, what actually happens is there are a lot of people making decisions. So you can actually have a lack of professionalism in the manner in which those companies are run. You can also have the inability of those companies to adapt and adopt new technology, new way of thinking. And this we have seen many companies actually languish from. Personally, I know of a company that in fact no longer exists precisely for that reason. So government a few years ago, through the Bainimarama government and of course now the Fiji First government, provided a number of incentives to encourage people to list on the stock exchange. So the number of tax incentives, number of tax breaks, ability to write off things, stamp duty exemptions. You pay a corporate tax of only 10% as opposed to the 20%. There is no capital gains tax on the transfer of shares from listed companies. There is no actual capital gains on sales even. So all of these number of initiatives have been put in place to grow the capital markets. What it also does, ladies and gentlemen, it provides ordinary Fijians to be able to find another source or another means of investing. Not simply putting their money in a bank or with a deposit, may not necessarily get a very good rate of return depending on how the liquidity market stands at that particular point in time. But it also allows ordinary mums and dads to buy shares. We have seen people, for example, investing in unit trust, which is good too. But we also want to encourage people from that perspective listing in the capital markets. So government, of course, has taken a lead in this too. As you know, the government has recently divested some important shares in some of the state-owned enterprises. What that has actually allowed is the ability of new players to come into the market. And the case in point is the Fiji Ports Corporation Limited, where we used to own 100% of it. Today we own 41%. But the dividend payout that we're going to get is going to be enormous. FNPF is the other large shareholder. And of course, Aitken Spence, which is a Fortune 200 company listed outside of USA in the stock exchange also in Sri Lanka. Now, as a result of that company coming in, the turnaround times at Fiji ports has dramatically improved. The levies that were actually charged on containers coming into Fiji has been removed because our turnaround times actually increased by 33% in the first 4 months. So the idea is to get the right and strategic partners to be able to take advantage of the enormous and sustained economic growth that we have had. We've now had 8 years of consecutive growth in Fiji. It is unprecedented. Fiji has had twice in its history, post-independence history, twice 7 years of consecutive growth, one immediately after independence and once in the 1990s, but never 8 years, and indeed is projected to grow for at least another 3 or 4 years. So the opportunity is very ripe, the environment is very ripe. There's a lot of opportunities not just for companies that are listed, but also companies that are not listed to be able to participate in this particular space. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to sort of contextualize all of this. Today, 69.4% of the entire Fijian population is below the age of 40. What that means is an enormous opportunity for young Fijians to be able to participate in the economy, but more so, when you have the capital markets develop, you actually have specialization. There's a requirement for specialization. You need specialist stockbrokers, you need investment advisors. It creates not just job opportunities, but is also able to, we are very lucky that we can tap into these young people to be able to provide us that new professionalism, that new knowledge base that is essentially critical for us to actually take advantage of this growth rate and ride the wave. We need to get onto the trajectory, because ultimately, for any country, what is really critical to provide economic empowerment is economic growth. And economic growth, ladies and gentlemen, in Fiji's case, has actually been on a much even keel. Because you can have economic growth, but the distribution of the wealth can actually be unequal. Fiji is only one of the 5 countries in the world recently, in the Asia Pacific region, sorry, I should say, that where inequality has actually dropped. Inequality has actually dropped, precisely for 2 reasons. One is the right type of intervention by government in the socio-economic sectors, where we're bringing up people at the bottom end of the socio-economic scale to be able to participate a lot more equally. Things like free education come to mind. But on the other hand, we're also providing a very conducive environment for businesses to actually make further profits, for businesses to actually have the level of confidence and to be able to invest. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it would be amiss of me not to take this opportunity not to mention climate change. Climate change, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very significant. As the Reserve Bank will tell you, if you look at the current, or if you look at the inflation graph for the past 7 years or so, you'll see that we have had huge peaks, precisely for 2 reasons. One of them is the price of fuel price, world fuel price, crude price of oil, and the other one is cyclones or floods. When you have a cyclone or a flood, it can really throw your economy apart, in particular for a small country like ours. We have the Honourable Prime Minister, who at the moment is at the forefront of bringing home this message, not just to other Pacific Islanders, but to the rest of the world, and indeed to show the vulnerability and the fragility that the space is the space that we exist in if we are subjected to further climatic changes. But within this climate change framework, there are also opportunities. There's also opportunities for businesses, for example, in this area of mitigation. What sort of other renewable energy type sources can we find? What type of investments can companies make in the space of renewable energy? How can companies participate in the adaptation space? These are numerous opportunities for companies to take advantage of, and we should really be getting into that space too. Of course, from our perspective, as announced in the budget, we're looking at green bonds, and we hope to, with the assistance of the Governor of the Reserve Bank and his team and the other multilateral agencies, we'll hopefully soon be launching the green bonds, which you can participate in, your companies can participate in, and of course, we hope to expand that to the rest of the Pacific Island countries. So I think it's very important for us to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that we are in a very good space. We need to be able to encourage these types of investments. We have some very positive factors out there, positive denominators that we all should be able to take advantage of. I'd like to, of course, thank the South Pacific Stock Exchange. It is critical, of course, the South Pacific Stock Exchange at all times maintains its credibility. It's very, very important, in particular in the sort of nascent years. You need to be able to have the level of credibility for the investors to be able to invest through you. So your staff need to be very credible, the manner that you conduct yourself needs to be extremely credible, and you should not tolerate people who are not credible at all. So I think the level of transparency, of course, needs to be there. Similarly, of course, one of the reasons why we like companies to be listed, it creates better governance. you're subject to more outside scrutiny, and you of course create a lot more transparency. The New Companies Act actually allows for the level of transparency. We want people to be able to make money, we want people to be at the same time be very transparent, and of course we want everybody to pay the right amount of taxes. It is very, very important, because if everybody does, we can even create a lot more opportunities for everybody else. I like to say that whenever we have new ideas, people tend to be quite averse to that. And we have introduced many new ideas and many new initiatives. One of them, of course, comes to mind is e-ticketing. E-ticketing, ladies and gentlemen, is something that's new, but in fact it creates a level of transparency. But I've also at the same time come from a part of Fiji where some people don't have electricity, where there are some people who actually still drink from wells, where there may be tadpoles in it. There are still people who drink from creeks. These are some of the development challenges that we have, but the level of infrastructure investment that has taken place in Fiji, in particular over the 5 or 6 years, is unprecedented. We need to continue on that path to be able to empower these people, your fellow Fijians. So it is very, very important that those of you who are specialists in the areas, we need to grow those areas. We need to do your business properly. We need to deliver your professional services to those people who deal in the stock exchange space to be able to do that a lot more better. Because overall, at the end of the day, we'll all be able to benefit from it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I like to, as I said, like to make a very short speech. So, I hope that raises some food for thought to be able to sort of understand and take away from this particular session. I'd like to, of course, thank everybody that's participated in this now annual grand awards that you have. And we'd like to encourage more companies to actually participate. And I like the fact that the South Pacific Stock Exchange has actually taken the initiative to recognize individuals, for example, whether they're stockbrokers or advisors, investment advisors. It's very, very important, ladies and gentlemen. We must be able to nurture individual talent, individual professionalism. As I said to a group of lawyers a few weeks ago, in Fiji, there's the same old way of the legal profession still doing what they used to do. There's very few large firms in Fiji. There's single practitioner law firms dominate the landscape, the legal landscape, and very few people specialize. You cannot actually go out in Suva or Lautoka or anywhere else and get a specialist lawyer who, for example, deals with infrastructure contracts. There is no specialist lawyer that actually deals specifically, for example, or part of the practice that deals with, say, IT contracts or IT law. We need to be able to do that. We need to be able to do that because in order to be able to encourage that level of professionalism and that level of service, which is very, very critical. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to once again thank SPSE, the chairperson and the staff, the new CEO and her team, and of course I'd like to also thank the regulator, the Governor of the Reserve Bank and his team that has an oversight over the South Pacific Stock Exchange. I'd like to wish all the nominees all the best, and I'm sure all of you have been tonight. Thank you very much.